Should I begin by saying, wow? The atmosphere in this room is simply intense, inspiring, and that there are so many in Delhi who are for Nehru, listening so intently about Nehru is indeed so positive, and the energy that I get from here is something which I cannot really talk to you in words. I hope this mood that there is in this room and what we've heard from my fellow speakers, and I know also Professor Prabhat Patnaik, is the mood of the country as a whole. This atmosphere that we have created here should be the atmosphere in every street, every mohalla, every village, north, south, east, west, everywhere. I think Aditya's book tells us that this is what our duty is and this is what we have to do. For Aditya, I know Professor Aditya Mukherjee has said whatever he has said in this book 100 times, 1,000 times, million times, and he has never tired of it. He keeps saying the same thing each time with a new energy, the way you do a prayer, as if it was the first time you prayed. And I think that is what is so important about the book, that you have to talk Nehru 100 times, million times, and tell people in the country, tell everyone that Nehru stood for the kind of imagination of India which was unparalleled. In fact, the objects, the resolution of the Constituent Assembly is exactly what the preamble was about. And it was Nehru who drafted it. When did we ever remember Nehru when we talked about the preamble and said that it was Nehru's draft? And this was how Nehru imagined India: secular, socialist, democratic, with equality, economic and political, scientific temper, fraternity. There were no empty words for Nehru. There were no abstract idealism. They were products of struggle for land, for workers' rights, against communalism, for democracy, against imperialism. They were real issues crystallized as abstract notions. Now we are fighting the abstract notions, forgetting that they were a product of struggle, the huge nationalist movement that was fought in the country. We often think of, as Aditya has said on so many occasions, that revolution was American Revolution, French Revolution, Russian Revolution, Chinese Revolution, but when was it ever thought that Indian nationalist movement was revolutionary? It was the largest non-violent mass movement over 100 years for an hegemonic battle against colonialism and slavery and imperialism. Did we ever describe India's mass movement as revolutionary? This is what I learned from Aditya, from the JNU historians, that we have to recognize India's movement as revolutionary movement in which millions have participated and internalized the imagination of India. And I do hope that we actually talk about it as revolution. We also, I think when Aditya talked about how Nehru was demonized, it's so clear that the intent was to really demolish what Nehru stood for. In fact, these were the hazards that the Hindutva Rashtravadis, the Hindu communalists, fought against and found a real threat. Sometimes I wonder that maybe we have not understood Nehru as much as they have. The Hindu communalists knew Nehru like behind their palm. They knew everything. And they knew none of those principles that Nehru stood for was for them and their imagination of India. Their imagination of India was a Hindu Rashtra, which based on hatred, which all of us know, on exclusion and which Nehru called in many, many ways. I would like to read some of them. Fascism, and he would say, anyway, I think I'll just, so in a way, Nehru called the Hindu-Muslim, Hindu communalism and the Muslim communalism leading to fascism, and especially he was very, very upset and angry that one was equating nationalism with Hindu communalism. That, I think, was the tragedy that we are facing today. Even the journalists call it Hindu nationalism today. I think we should stop calling Hindu nationalism, Hindu communalism as nationalism. It is essentially fascist. And Nehru said in so many words, in so many places where Aditya has shown, where Nehru wrote letters to the chief minister, where Nehru wrote essays, where Nehru pronounced before independence, during independence, after independence, that fascism and authoritarianism is what is the outcome of Hindu communalism. And I think this we should remember. I think we should remember and internalize every values that Nehru stood for. Unfortunately, although I am known as a child rights activist, sometimes I'm saddened that Nehru has been reduced to Children's Day.
Not even children.
And not even, okay. And not even Children's Day. He's much more than Children's Day. Much more than how we have to celebrate him. You know, even in Children's Day, why don't we have themes? Like how there are International Child's Day, there is a theme, Children and Agriculture. So Nehru and democracy, Nehru and secularism, Nehru and foreign policy, Nehru and Panchashil. No. All that one knows is Nehru wore that waistcoat and he had a red rose. Whomever I ask of their childhood, because I had to prepare for today's lecture, I asked them, what is it about Nehru that you remember? Two things, red rose, which is of course very important, but not so important for me. And the other thing they said was, oh, those boring lessons in social studies textbooks about the 5-year plans and the Panchashil, and those boring social studies and history teachers who told us we could actually leave it in choice. We don't have to do it and study it because it's so boring. I can't teach it to you, you won't learn. And that was the refrain of at least 20 people I spoke about my age, I am now 75, and the others on how they learnt about Nehru and history. And why are we so alarmed that this is what is happening today when we did nothing about Nehru? Why are we so angry? Why are we so saddened? Why are we taken by surprise that there is this communal monster that is around? What did we do as our duty to celebrate India's nationalist movement, to celebrate Nehru, to celebrate Gandhi, to celebrate all those who fought for freedom? I think our fault is a lot more than the communalists and their fault sometimes. We should do much more. I'm afraid that actually when sometimes I go to villages in Bihar, in Jharkhand, in Orissa, in Telangana, and for the last 6 months going villages after villages, and I find youth are seeking guidance. They don't want the saffron flag. They don't want communalism. They want guidance. They want an ideological framework. They believe in equality. They believe in social justice. The young Dalit, Adivasi, and poor youth, they're so different from the urban youth that we know. But there are so many of them looking for leadership. There's so many of them who want to be recognized, who want to be visibilized. There is a boy who goes every morning to gathering children to do exercises, and then they talk about the preamble. Preamble has become a prayer in so many places. Why don't we publicize them? Why don't we just tell these youth that, look, you have Nehru. You are also a Nehru. Do more of it. I think we should not be thinking that we are in a hopeless terrain. Look at the number of people who actually voted against the communal forces. So let us not not get despair. Let us not go into hopelessness. And I think hope is power. I think we have to use that weapon, believe in youth, trust them. I would say even urban youth, the energy that the youth and the student power has, none of us will have. We can only give lectures. I think they will have to be given the tools, the weapons, the armory to fight the communal struggles. And I agree with Professor Agarwal that the communal fight has to be fought as much as we fight for equality, social justice, and other idealist principles. One last thing I thought, at a personal level, I have to say, which is somewhat disturbing, which Nehru also said, of course, that we must stand openly and bravely with the minorities and the Muslims particularly. I believe so. I believe strongly that we have to stand by the Muslims, and it is a pity that it has to be an act of courage and bravery that I stand with minorities. It's a shame that if I'm standing with minorities, I have to take off my fear, that I have to be fearless in doing this. What nonsense is this? I mean, it is so scary to even say that I am a friend of Muslim. It is so scary to even say, let me put it this way, that there are many friends I have, and many of those in my daily lives who are Muslims, but I never thought of them as Muslims. I thought of them as a carpenter, a plumber, my own private secretary, my friend, and so many of them. But now I am forced to be a Hindu and to look at all my friends as Muslims. This is indeed a very sad, sad day. I neither want to be a Hindu, nor do I want to be forcibly look at my Fatimas and my Beans and my Ashima, all of them as Muslims. It's a sad day for me, but I leave with a lot of hope that this meeting, this celebration, this book that Aditya wrote, which I could not put down, it takes only 3 hours to go from cover to cover. It's unputdownable. It charges you with action. You want to now run to the field and say, now let me fight. I think it's a great, great book, and so well written, so lucid, so accessible. I sometimes felt, is he a historian or is he what? I mean, it's a genius kind of a book. And I'm glad that all the footnotes are at the end. And that it makes a smooth reading, and I don't even care for footnotes. We have had enough of evidence-based research going on, and I'm sure that you will all be inspired, and we will all stand up for acting, and for acting for democracy, and for Nehru's imagination of India. Thank you, Aditya.